All right, welcome back to episode 2 of our AI Masterclass series. Rick, Christina, Tommy, welcome back. For those of you who may have missed last episode, I encourage you to go back and watch and listen to it. However, Christina, Tommy, introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I'm Christina Catenacci. I have a PhD in law where I studied surveillance technologies and privacy laws all around the world and tried to make a better balance of rights. And in addition, I've been a senior policy advisor with the government, and I have taught legal ethics. And then I met Tommy, and we have a similar interest in surveillance, and we decided to join forces and create VoyAIge strategy.
Yeah, thanks. It's really great to see everybody again. My name's Tommy Cooke. I have a long history in AI. I've been studying AI since we talked about it as like a facial recognition problem in cameras in New York City. I started doing this work about 10 years ago as a professor. I have a PhD as well. A lot of that focuses on artificial intelligence ethics and, as Christina said, surveillance. And over the last 5 years, I've done a lot of different kinds of work related to AI. I've taught in Germany, I've taught in Kingston in Canada. I've taught in different parts of Western Europe, and I've spent quite a bit of time as a consultant in trustworthy artificial intelligence. And I also worked for the Ontario Privacy Commissioner's Office as a tech analyst as well. The last few years, Christine and I have been having a lot of great conversations and have been fortunate enough to start up this company that focuses on everything to do with law, ethics, and policy when it comes to artificial intelligence. It's really great to be here again. Thanks for having us, guys.
Awesome.
Well, I don't know about you, Rick, but I say buckle up, folks.
And I'm a sales guy, so I'm going to slow the train down today and ask barbaric questions if that's okay, that people want answers to. Hey, today's topic's AI in the workplace, okay? And if you missed last episode, we were talking about beyond the buzzwords because I was talking about how a lot of people think it's just this chat GPT thing. And, in layman terms, Christina brings a lawyer's lens that we're talking about, and Tommy's done tremendous work at the government level, consulting. And so we wanted them to kind of shed some light from a different perspective on a hot topic, AI in the workplace. So if I was to ask you, let's say, Tommy, just quickly, what are three on the upside of AI in the workplace? We're talking risks and rewards today. So it would be quickly three things. We're going to get into it, but what would be three rewards you'd say for an intelligent business leader that understands the potential of AI? What's the upside for them?
Operational efficiency, saving time. A lot of your employees are spending, 10 minutes here, alt tabbing between software, armchair swiveling. You can get that time back with AI, and it saves you a lot of cost and makes people more productive and creative. Number two is insights. AI is really good at finding trends in your massive data sets that you didn't know exist, and that can really open up doors for marketing, for sales, for energizing creative teams. And the last one is customer experience. So when you're thinking about product delivery, service delivery for people that are using your devices, using your websites, it's really great for people to be able to get tailored insights, tailored recommendations when they're browsing around, looking at your inventory. So those are the three that I would suggest: efficiency, insights, and customer experience.
Yeah, because we're seeing, Melissa, so many customers just on the marketing side. We see so much unstructured data, and AI is able to gobble that up and organize it the way Tommy's saying there.
Yeah.
In automation at low level customer tasks, we've created, Tommy, AI chat GPT powered chat bots that can handle level one type customer service requests. What's your location? Can I put in a service call, et cetera? So we've reduced with one dealer who we work with. I think they were saying like 18% right off the top of manual effort to handle some of those level one. So there's a lot of upside, and that's what we wanted to focus on today. Of course, the upside, also risk to AI, because I think a lot of people are blindly walking into this thing, Christina. And you, through a lawyer's lens, we'll call it, what would you say are maybe three risks if you were to wave a few flags out there?
Sure. So, three main risks. The first one has to be said, they are prone to hallucinate. So this goes straight to accuracy. You don't really know. You can't just believe everything because they make stuff up. And the second one is they have potentially algorithmic bias, and this could lead to discriminatory decisions. in the workplace. And lastly, there could be deep fakes that convince people to do things. For example, transfer money to a scammer.
Mm.
And this could be very dangerous. This has happened in real life where a CFO transferred millions of dollars to a scammer, believing that he was video chatting with a manager. And it was just not true. And that's very dangerous because it goes straight to accuracy. You just don't know what to believe. You don't know what is true. This is dangerous.
And that's one of the things I've learned from you actually is because we've done some work around deep fakes and both audio and video and the responsiveness now, because our marketing team, Melissa, as you know, is creating deep fakes of in some cases sales reps to replicate them on scale with messages that are controlled and they're positive messages.
Mhm,
That
mhm.
said, I popped out a deep fake video a little while ago when we get into this technology on LinkedIn, and I asked people like, is this really me or is this AI, Rick? And 50% of them, said, hey, it was the real thing, and 50% said not, including my wife. So I was thinking, okay, I could be taken over by AI already. But a couple stats for the for you viewers here today. Here's one I found interesting was that 9 out of 10 leading businesses have made investments in AI, but less than 15% have deployed AI capabilities in their work. And I think a lot of people are kicking the tire on this thing and
Mm.
kind of putting their toe in the water, but maybe they're not turning the crank on it yet. And last episode, Tommy, you made an interesting comment. I was asking you how old you think AI, if it was a human,
Yeah.
and what did you say again, how old it is? Because we're right on the front of this thing.
It's not double digits in months yet. It's got to be 6 to 9 months, Rick, but no more than that.
Yeah.
Mm.
No
So if
more.
you're a leader, and we're working with hundreds of businesses right now, we're seeing
Hmm.
nominal, um, I would say we're seeing a lot of interest, but as far as what's coming out of the end of the conveyor belt, we're not seeing people really understand how to implement it. And today, we'll talk a little bit about
Hmm.
good things, but also some, brake pedals you might want to be aware of. Here's another one. 51% of businesses, sorry, are turning to AI to help with their cybersecurity and fraud management. And so, Christina, you mentioned that deepfake example. I can
Mhm.
tell you our clients that sell cybersecurity services are now using AI on the front end to, detect, to mitigate risks and whatnot based on data sets that are way larger than they could previously see to predict threats. Because we know the bad guys are using AI as well, and we've seen, stats out there how quickly they can decode passwords, yada yada, in seconds that years ago would have taken, years to do. But as we look at the workplace today, we want to bring it down into kind of what people are doing. What do you think, Christina? So if you're a business leader now, I'm going to ask you like, what are the blind spots? Because you worked with a lot of organizations as well. Like, what do you think if I'm a leader watching today are common blind spots that maybe my peers have?
Right. So when it comes to AI in the workplace, many employers are missing the fact that they are not doing the policies and procedures that they need to have to establish the rules regarding acceptable use and unacceptable use in the workplace. So when there's no rules like that, they don't know what they're following. And
Mm.
also, it sets out responsibilities in the policies and procedures. It sets out responsibilities for various actors in the workplace, so that they know what the rules are. Similarly, employers, they just don't enforce, if they have the policies, they don't enforce them.
Mm.
So people are like, well, there's no consequences, so we can do whatever we want. And even worse, employers are assuming that since they never mentioned it, no one's using it in the workplace. That's not the case. I mean, I've read stories where employees are secretly using it. So they're doing it, they're using it to do their work. And maybe the employer doesn't even know, right?
Mm.
And another issue is employers see only short-term gains. They don't really look at the long-term considerations regarding law, policy, and ethics. They just aren't very clear on the impacts of AI in the workplace. And lastly, employers may not be willing to create a culture which starts from the top and goes all the way through the organization on how to have like a healthy understanding and respect for AI. If you don't have that in the workplace, you don't know what's happening. You don't know what everyone's doing.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
almost like I would equate it to the, BYOD in a way, like bring your own device. Like people started to permeate
Yeah.
the traditional office technology platform. You know what I mean, Tommy? Like we used to go to work and we use
Hmm.
our work computer, but now we're bringing our mobile device, our laptop from home, and now it's like a big smeared mess of what technology is being used. And AI, I would say, is an example of that. And
Mhm.
you
We were
know,
talking about, AI being in its infancy. When somebody shows up to the workplace on occasion with an infant, people get excited. Maybe
yeah.
they want to bring their kid to work, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
if that's exciting
And
when
show
people
it
are coming back
around.
to work, but like, hey, look at my kid. Yeah, it
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, it's a good point, Rick.
absolutely.
It's contagious because you get one sales rep, and I'll just talk from sales side, winging out, they're uploading client data. Yeah, they have no idea. I can guarantee it with a general, I'm speaking general here, but with a large degree of accuracy. I don't know of an organization yet, sadly, that has implemented an AI policy that in any way provides guidelines
Hmm.
for their different sets of workers, be they customer facing, sales, customer service, any operations, because to your point, Christina, like, these aren't old, these aren't unpopular tools. We're using them all the time. I know next episode, I think we're going to talk about like what's in an AI policy, but if I came back to you on what would be an example of a rule that a business leader, if they're listening right now, should be thinking about implementing to protect themselves? Is there like, I know there's probably a list of rules, but what would be one that's like a no-brainer? Like you got to have this kind of.
An example of a rule would be when it comes to unacceptable uses in the workplace. So maybe the employer doesn't want employees to use AI at all. Like maybe they don't want to use chatbots in the workplace. They would have to say that. They would have to say no chatbots in the workplace, or they could say you can use it for these things, but this would be unacceptable so that they understand what the borders are, like what are
Right.
the
What
rules.
would be unacceptable though? I'll tell you why.
I was
Because
just going to say, what is unacceptable?
yeah,
Or is
most
that different
employees,
for everybody?
yeah, most employees wouldn't have make a decision on a chat bot. You know what I mean? That's made upstream in the org chart.
One ex unacceptable use could be don't put in confidential information
Hmm.
Hmm.
into the chatbot.
Okay.
That way, you have a concrete example having to do with chatbots and sales. Now, another example could be maybe the employer, like the company has
Mhm.
trademarks and copyrights, like intellectual property.
Mm,
And they're now spitting this stuff into the thing and
Mhm.
getting out other things, incorporating and scraping some of that information
Mhm.
into your answer. So now you're kind of training your own chatbot on your own confidential information
mm.
and your own intellectual property.
And is it fair to say, and Tom, you may know this from a techie standpoint, but when someone uploads information into a chat GPT, we'll say for example, and there's different ones. I think people think that the content they upload stays within a room within their chat GPT environment, that it's not scanned and then utilized potentially by someone else. In other words, does it remain confidential, if you follow me, with the uploader's organization, or is it scanned and then potentially manipulated and shows up in a competitor's proposal or a competitor's.
It's impossible to know.
Mm,
When I talked about AI being in its infancy, this is part of what I was talking about. And it
Mhm.
depends on the vendor that you're talking to, right?
mhm,
Some have very, very specific rules for this. Some have spelled this out in their terms of use agreement and they make it very clear. But listen, if you're an employee and you've signed up for ChatGPT and you're using it to make your work more efficient, and you're one of those people who has
Mhm.
upload an Excel document into this thing, unless you've read those policies and you can ensure to your employer that those data won't be used to train that vendor's product, and potentially share those insights with other people that you don't know about, that you haven't met before. It's a big risk, right? And so a lot of these companies that provide these kinds of technologies make it really clear that they do train off of the data that you give them. And depending on where you live in the world, there are very strict laws about this, or there are laws that are imminently coming. So I think being aware of these kinds of blind spots is really, really important, right?
But
Yeah.
I know you two are really active with VoyAIge right now, creating AI policies and guidelines and then training employees. And I think it's like an untapped frontier.
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted to bring up those examples because I think people just
Hmm.
don't get it yet. And that's why we wanted to have you guys on.
Tommy, what should execs do to demonstrate to their stakeholders that they're leveraging AI?
Be a real estate agent. I really mean this. I once had
Mm,
a
mm,
colleague explain to me that whenever you're given this opportunity to speak about your work,
mhm,
tell people what the house is about. You don't, as a real estate agent, invite people in and
mm,
say, here's the living room, here's the kitchen, that's the backyard. What do you think? You have a conversation. Did you know that this family built this room in this way? Because they really love the front view. Get a
mm,
little bit of sunshine in the front, it leads right through into the kitchen because they happen to take a wall out that used to be right where you're standing. Not only are you telling people about the house, but you're giving them a bit of a history and a little bit of an explanation about why things have happened. And I
mm.
think as an executive, something that you could be doing that really helps people is have a conversation with them and guide them through the thought process. Let them know that you do have a plan and let them understand that you have been thinking about this quite a bit. So be a real estate agent. I think people really appreciate that.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
Now, have you seen, is there an example of a leader in an organization that you think, would be someone that would be a good role model? Now a lot of our customers, Melissa, would be in the, call it, 50 to 500 employee range. Okay, so it's
Mhm,
small,
mhm,
medium-sized business, and they don't have access to the consultants necessarily all the time, or so-called experts and whatnot. But is there somebody that you think has done a good job as a leader, introducing AI, inviting AI? We get one of our customers that wrote an article recently about how AI, to one of your points earlier, needs to be part of the culture. And I used to work with as a sales guy. I used to sell to a company called 3M, and I forget the percentage, but that company believed that they wanted their employees to take 3% of their work time or whatever for just what they call, I think, was imagination. And I may be off here, but I thought it was a terrific thing. So in other words, that's how Scotch tape, I think, was invented, for example. Some guy said we need to stick something to a wall, and
mm,
another guy came up with something, or lady. But
Hmm.
I don't see enough people, like the leaders. uh it's almost a reactionary thing. Hey, John's got a good idea for AI, or Mary had
Yeah.
should we do this? There's not a stop and like, let's think about this. And I'm referencing a client of ours in New York who wrote that article, Melissa, about how it should be part of the
mhm.
culture and everybody should be thinking about it. And sorry, I know I'm putting you on the spot there for a leader, but um,
Are you looking for a specific person or are you looking for a role?
maybe it's a role. It might be a role, Tommy, but
Yeah, business operations managers, people that are in charge of strategic insight and development for an organization. And look, I know that not everybody can afford this and not everybody's at that scale, but if you are, or if you're looking at key positions to bring into an organization, somebody that is in charge solely of looking at how the organization runs, somebody that's in charge of breaking down silos, somebody that's in charge of making sure that data and collaboration opportunities are moving laterally across the organization. These people are great for that because when they're looking at how to make an operation more efficient, when they're looking at finding ways of returning time to key people in the organization, they have to look at new trends and new technology. And so it's often these people that are looking at artificial intelligence first. I think these are the kinds of people that we should be looking towards for leadership here.
I ask because today's topic is workplace risks and rewards. And I think one of the risks is not appointing somebody or not having a
Mm,
so-called leader or champion of this. And that's why I think a lot of organizations, they're handing it to their IT person, thinking it's a techie thing. And sometimes IT people are great looking cross-organizational kind of, but some of them are more siloed and want to drill, a 38-foot hole when you just need a post hole to put a post in and then let's move on kind of thing.
Yeah, and listen,
Yeah.
like
No,
IT
I'm not trying to
people
offend
are
my IT friends, by the way. Yeah.
IT people are tech champions. And
Yes.
we can always depend upon them for that. But IT people are busy. They're
Yes.
busy stopping gaps and taking care of the organization's needs and making sure that everything works. Whenever I've had the privilege of talking to people who either lead IT teams or hardworking, dedicated, full-time IT people, I often hear from them that they're often expected to
Mhm.
lead tech innovation and they never have time for it. Never.
Right.
And so it's people that are a bit higher up in the organization, I think, Rick and Melissa, that should begin they should start thinking of themselves as tech champions because they can socialize it easier and they have more time to do it.
Yeah. So delegate.
Delegate, yeah. Find new champions.
That's right. So Christina, what does a workplace need? Like, kind of overview that for us.
Sure. Employees, contractors, management,
Mhm.
everyone in the workplace, they all need guidance about what the employer wants to do in terms of AI and what values it wants to convey.
Mhm.
And this is essentially a message that comes from the top. Like I said earlier,
Mhm.
employees are justifiably worried about AI coming and taking over their jobs.
Mhm.
And they need some transparency from the employer about how AI will change roles and processes and what kinds of opportunities the employer will be offering in-house when it comes to upscaling and reskilling for upcoming jobs. Like what supports are going to be there for the employees.
Mhm.
Okay.
And Rick, I know when we were looking at stats before, to your point there about employees are fearful and worried, one of the stats was 77% are concerned that AI will cause job loss in the next year, right? So that just plays right into, they're worried.
Yes, it's totally understandable, and there needs to be something there. Like the employer needs to step in and say something to assure them or provide some kind of support for the transition
Mhm.
when eventually there will be fewer
Right.
humans and humans will have to work with machines.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to speak to a group of seniors at Old Miss University last week. And I was talking to them about, their personal brand. And I wanted to bring up AI because I wanted to see where they were at, like at the university level, right?
Mm.
And they had interesting cut at it. They were trying to navigate where the pockets of opportunity would be for employment that would be least impacted by AI. Thought it was interesting.
Mhm.
These are
Mhm.
people going into digital marketing and sales. I thought it was really intelligent of them, by the way. Good coaching by the professor.
Mhm.
And what I was saying to them was, I think that they couldn't be in a better position because the everything I'm seeing is the ability of the human to communicate with another human will be the most premium value interaction as we get all these bots going and whatever. And so, when I work with Fanshawe College, which is a local college you guys may be familiar with, you know, the thing that comes up always in reviews, conversely, is the students can't communicate. And, whether it's, they don't want to talk, they don't want to, millennials, 41% of them don't even want to deal with someone in a buying process, yada, yada. And so this AI thing, I think one of the risks is if you're not someone that has risen above, we'll call it what an AI bot can do. I mean, heads up in terms of like, you got to take a good look at yourself in the mirror, whatever role you're in. And I'm not saying that from a fear perspective, but I just think there's going to be an increasing value placed on how we communicate with one another, like a real human to a real human. And the ultimate being that in-person, physically belly to belly meeting will be what used to be the de facto standard. I think is now going to be like the primo piece. But
Is
anyway,
that the whole human in the loop that you mentioned last week, Christina?
well, that's kind of
Yeah.
for checking things,
Yeah,
but
it is. It is.
I mean more. I'm just shoving people to think about, what can an AI bot do and what can't it do? Because a guy explained it to me one time. He said, Rick, AI is the paintbrush, okay? The human is the painter. So you can't, the
Mm.
brush doesn't replace the human. But
Right.
we need to figure out how we use it. And that's why we're talking to you guys today, because it's so new and people don't, fear can build quickly, but so can optimism, right? If you know how to use this thing.
Absolutely.
Um,
Can I
so
can I give a
yeah,
quick analogy that I think might help?
yeah.
I'd mentioned at the beginning of the episode that I lived in Germany. My wife and I lived in Germany in 2018. And something that we used to do quite a bit that was a lot of fun was just like rent the most expensive Beamer we could find. And then like every other weekend we would drive down to the Alps and visit my wife's cousins. When you get on the Autobahn, for anyone who's had the pleasure of doing it, it's fast.
Hmm.
It's really fast. And there are parts of the Autobahn where you're not on a straight line and the road bends. And the thing visually that helped me was not just looking at the road, because if you can't see what's ahead of you and you're doing 220, it's not super comfortable, right? Aside from being fun, it's risky.
He's talking kilometers, by the way, I think. Or he's talking miles per hour.
Yeah,
What are you talking
no
about?
they
miles
use
per hour.
kph over there, not
Right,
So our
right.
miles.
Americans
Yeah.
know. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point, actually. It's a very different speed, isn't it?
yeah.
But when you're driving, the thing that guides you are the guardrails on the side of the road. You always have an eye on this thing that's just at eye level, maybe just shoulder height when you're going around the corners, and it keeps you safe. It lets you know that visually there's something there to guide you. Guardrails don't just stop catastrophes and disasters, but like a good policy, like a good procedure, like good rules or good governance strategy even. A
Mhm.
guardrail helps guide where you're heading and keeps you safe because you know that it's dependable, you know that it's visible, and you know that it's there. And that thing made me feel more comfortable driving really, really fast. That's 220 kilometers an hour and not miles.
Okay.
I want to be in the car with you. Good analogy, though. Good analogy. Guardrails, right? Helps prevent a disaster, hopefully.
So
Yeah, hopefully.
let's
Yeah.
talk car crashes. Like, what are like? You're a lawyer, Christina. What are some legal like implications, like that people might bump into if they're not staying on the pavement?
Mhm.
Right. They can become very misaligned because no one's really clear about what the rules are, and you end up with any rules that do exist, they're inconsistent, they make no sense. People know this and recognize this and do whatever they want. And
Mhm.
that's dangerous because then, they're everyone's taking it into their own hands.
Mhm.
And that is the opposite of trying to create guardrails for AI, which is like a tool, right? It's a tool, and people need to use this tool. There needs to be clarity with the employer's expectations so that you know what the guardrails are.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're just not going to have any kind of order. And this is like, legally speaking, it's not a good thing to
So
have no order.
talk to me about, like, why is it okay legally not a good thing? Is it not a good thing from an HR perspective? Is it not a good thing, like the company's exposing themselves to litigation? Like,
Yeah, well, I should mention that my other specialty is employment law. So I do have some understanding about what happens in employment HR situations where an employee just does whatever they want. They go rogue. They
Mhm.
mhm,
they could be dishonest, they could be doing this, they could be doing that, they're going behind people's back. This is not a good thing for the
Mhm.
employer who should be the one who's controlling the situation and providing the guardrails. If someone's just doing whatever they want,
Mhm.
that is like very dangerous because they could be breaking rules, and who would be responsible? The employer.
Right.
The employer is responsible for unruly rogue employees doing whatever they want,
mhm,
right? So it's very important to be clear, very transparent about what you want in your workplace and outline these things in the policies and procedures, train them on it, and then, of course, monitor it regularly so that you know if someone's starting to go off.
Mhm.
Like, don't wait until there's a major, problem, blow
mhm,
up issue. Try to get it sooner, and you can enforce the policy. The policy would have what the disciplinary response would be in
mhm,
the policy. So, like, if you do this unacceptable use of AI, where you just want the AI to do all the work and the human is doing no work, which is kind of dangerous, for various reasons. If you don't want that to happen, you have to say in the policy, don't do these things are unacceptable. And the consequence, the disciplinary consequence would be whatever, a
Mhm.
warning or a suspension or anything up to and including termination.
Mhm.
So you would have to say these things to try to control the situation and be clear about what the policy is. Employers get in trouble in employment cases when they are not clear, they've never communicated the policy. If the
Totally.
employee has never seen the policy and then they're terminated for breaking the policy, well, they're
Mhm.
going to say, I didn't even know there was a policy. And so who's going to get in trouble then? The
Mhm.
employer.
So
Is there a sign off on this said policy, or is this just communicated?
Yes, like what happens is the employees would be trained. An appropriate trainer would train the employees. And during that process, at the end, the employee signs off on it and says, yes, I've seen this policy. I've received the
Right.
training
And I
and
agree.
I sign off on it.
Mhm.
And that's how you kind of prove in a
Right.
court or whatever that yes, they have heard of this policy and then they went against the policy. They did something to break the rules that are stipulated in the
but
policy, and now they receive the disciplinary consequence.
So I,
It
I
is true.
I know you're like an employment, you studied employment law from a lawyer's perspective. That's why I asked, because if you think about it, okay, I entered the workforce in 1989. Okay, so we had a policy, no making long distance phone calls from the company phone. You will
Right.
park here. If you're going to be, not at work, this is this is the protocol
Yes.
you have to follow. Fast forward, okay, we had this thing called social media come out, okay, and I see the same problems with this as happened with social media. So all of a sudden, people were doing what they thought as an individual was the right thing on social media. And I'll talk to LinkedIn specifically because I believe that's the business platform. And I
Right.
think people innocently, in some cases, were doing things that damaged the parent company, let alone themselves. What do I
Mhm.
mean as an example? We would say, posting derogatory comments about a competitor, use of foul language, maybe even up and into, political statements. I would say, because we offer for LinkedIn like a policy guideline just to keep them, Tommy, back to your guardrails, because
Hmm.
driving fast, who knows what these guys are going to do, right? And the
Mhm.
same thing with AI. This is another wave hitting the beach that's hard for the business leader. So I think it's great, what you're doing to awaken them because just again, I could walk into 100 offices and I'm pretty sure in that 100 to 500 employee range,
It's a free
you'd
for
be
all.
hard, yeah, felt to find. So so Tommy, okay, so a lot of our audience is sellers and they sell to buyers. So in your world, from a consulting and professing and all those great things, your exposure, what would you say like buyers are using from an AI perspective, from a strategic perspective?
Creativity,
Mm.
talking points. One of the things that ChatGPT does really, really well is helps you access a wealth of information about an industry, about a market, about a customer profile that you might not know anything about. And this happens a lot when an organization shifts gears a little bit and they have a new service offering or new product offering. Something that I'm seeing sellers do really, really effectively is turn to ChatGPT to get in the know and get in the know quickly.
Mm.
It's easy to say to ChatGPT, this literally, this is the position that I am in. This is my job. My organization has made X, Y, and Z changes, and I need to learn as much as I can because I have 15 sales calls next week with a customer base that I don't know anything about, and my team's way behind.
Mhm.
And ChatGPT accommodates and it does the research and it spews out things. And I think part of the impetus in doing this, Rick, is not just to get in the know and to do it quickly, but it's recognizing that everyone's competitors are doing this too. So if you're not prepared, what ends up happening is that those prospective customers that you're going to be talking to might scratch their head and say, why doesn't this person use ChatGPT to get in the know?
Hmm.
Everyone else I've talked to is doing it, so why aren't you? I think customers are really, really sensible and they understand that if people are using AI effectively and they're using it often, they can tell when a seller is able to talk their language without much turnaround time. So using AI to get in the know and to stay competitive, to stay ahead of what your competitors are doing is really, really key right now.
Yeah, like we see it like a lot of buyers are using it to shape RFPs, like re requests for proposals or
Hmm.
tenders. Because to your point, if I'm a buyer, I might buy something, technology maybe has a 3-year life cycle, let's say, right? So it's 3 years ago since I looked at this, and I'm naive as to the specific criteria, right? And then from the seller standpoint, flip it around, you can certainly use it as an education tool. So I think that there's wins for both sides there in the workplace, and if you're a salesperson right now and you have not played with it, and when I'm talking on a regular basis, I think you need probably about just roughly you need at least 4 hours on that platform just to understand how to drive it. The prompt, I'm saying at
And how
minimum,
to
just so
prompt
you
it.
know, oh, this thing has reverse. Oh, okay, I didn't even know because the more you play with it, obviously, the more intelligent it gets there. So,
And Rick, I'm going to add in a piece of advice for your sellers, if I may. And I think this
mhm,
is really important. I talked about executives being real estate agents. If you're a seller
Mhm.
and you have the ability to use ChatGPT, for example, be that real estate agent. And I referenced this when I just spoke a moment ago. Tell the ChatGPT model that you're using when you log in who
Mhm.
you are. Tell them what the problems are that you are facing. Tell the machine, I'm not talking about them as if they're people. You can tell I've gotten a little bit lost with this. Tell ChatGPT explicitly what it is that you're looking for and say, like, I need you to focus on these points. Have a conversation with it. And
Right.
it feels weird. It feels weird to have a conversation with it. I watched Joaquin Phoenix and Her the other day. If anyone hasn't seen this movie yet, I highly, highly recommend it. But this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
It's being okay with having a very personal conversation with
mhm.
Mm.
ChatGPT and giving it the context around what you're doing makes the models better. So
Absolutely.
explain the how and why and not just the what.
So good in, good out, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Christina, talk to me about how AI is helping salespeople, sell smarter, like maybe with insights or leads or things like that.
Sure, like that's what I was going to say. AI can help be used to help generate high quality leads,
Mm.
personalize the customer interactions. So this is a good thing for salespeople and also the predictive insights.
Mm.
You can really get a lot of information, but it's important to not rely on it too much. It's like a fine balance, right? It's a fine line between like too much, not enough. It's got to be a healthy balance where you're using it enough to get the leads, to get the insights and learning from it, but also realizing that you have something to add as the human.
Mm.
Melissa, like, so we're coaching reps all the time on prospecting strategies, yada yada. So I
Mhm.
remember there's a stat that rung my bell out of a Boston company that 3-line emails get read 30% more. And that stuck with me because I think, a lot of the emails we open, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a box of words, right?
Paragraphs.
Uh, I use it personally to shorten things.
Mm.
Like take this long thing and shorten it down if I'm a seller, especially
Yes.
if I don't know the person. Um, but anyway,
Hmm.
just a thought there.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Um, I mean, we talked to it a little bit, but what are common mistakes and misunderstandings, Tommy? I mean, we've talked about mistakes people have made and within companies and blah blah blah, but can you expand on that a little more?
Yeah, that's a great question, Melissa. And I think it really depends upon the kind of model or system that a company brings in. But
Mm.
I think the number one most consistent mistake or misunderstanding that organizations make has to be recognizing that the human in the loop matters. I know we keep coming back to this point, human in the loop. What what is he even talking about? It's quite literal. You can take it at
Mhm.
face value. It just means that there's a process that's circular, right?
Yes.
You get an AI system, you bring it in, you train it, it runs, and then, a couple times a year, hopefully you're looking at its performance, you're trying to understand whether or not it's successful. You've
Mhm.
given the thing KPIs just like you do for your people, and you
Mhm.
keep repetitiously making it better. But this does not happen because AI was programmed to make itself better. AI definitely makes itself better in most scenarios and most examples that people are using in businesses. Of course, AI is going to improve upon itself, but you need to have somebody supervising the process. You need to have somebody in the loop, as it were, to check the data to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that it's accurate. Every once in a while, you kind of want to do like a soft audit. Have a look at the data and the information that your teams are getting, and don't chastise them for what they're getting. And certainly you're not looking to punish the AI, but the idea is that you want to calibrate it. So whatever it's putting out, if it feels 20% less accurate than it should be, tell your engineers that. Talk to your data analytics people and your engineering people that are in a position that can calibrate this sort of thing to continuously make it better. So again, humans matter with
Mm-hmm.
AI is a big takeaway, and you have to find the right people in your organization with the right technical know-how and the right interest and really support them to keep making those AI systems better all the time.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying it doesn't solve all my problems.
Well, I think
Initially, it might, but you got to keep pushing it. Yeah.
I think people are getting lazy with technology, to be honest. And
Mm.
that human in the loop you mentioned, like, are nodding, I'm sure listening, but laziness drives me crazy.
Mm.
What's obvious, right? We have a statement at Sell to Win or Into, right? Common sense isn't that common. And we look at some things sometimes. I'm like, okay, where'd that come from? Here's some mistakes I see, okay, going on right now. It's a
Mm.
fragmented plan. You got different departments going off doing different things. Sales is doing this with it, service is doing that, and there's no, to your point, Tom, there's no holistic kind of view. I would say using AI to create social media posts, both copy and images. Now, I can tell you that everything I've read says that the typical human can recognize an AI post a mile away, and it actually does more damage to the person's brand than they think. So some of them think, hey, I'm posting more, but you can tell them there's always 3 points in the post, or the graphics missing an arm, or whatever it is. Like, I
A
think
million
people are,
emojis.
again, I go back to lazy, right? Lazy, we know where we get to when we're lazy. The other thing is you mentioned in the last program, which I think is a mistake, is people aren't thinking about pilot projects and
Mm.
like eating it by the bite size. I don't think people are thinking that way enough. And they're looking for pockets of opportunity. And I think they're out there, whether it's, base level
Mhm.
automations, or we talked about, unstructured data, collapsing it into a usable environment. But I know for our team, we're using AI very successfully right now to determine when to post things. So we know where the fish are biting and when they're biting. So we'll place it on this platform at this time, or we'll place it this time on that platform, or release these emails at this time based on. So it's really helping us structure kind of some unstructured data per se to boost our marketing efforts. Anyway, FYI there.
So, Tommy, talk to me about best in class AI training. I know we're going to have an episode on that, but give us a high level view of that
Oh,
if
there's
there is
so
such
many things. And I know we got to keep an eye on the time here because I'll just blabber forever about this one,
a
Melissa. I'll try to narrow it down as much as I can. The first one is customized content. One of the mistakes that I see often when a company tries to upskill and train its workforce is that they use these kind of like AI 101 approaches. Sure,
Mhm.
fundamentals and basic concepts are really, really important, but your organization has a lot of really interesting people that have trained to think about the world and process it in different ways. They
Mhm.
have, for lack of better terms, a learning profile. They have preferences about how they want to learn. And they also have dynamics about their job that are unique to them and not yours. And understanding what those dynamics are and how they like to learn, how they learn best, is how you should start tailoring your AI training. If you know that you're bringing in AI and the fundamentals, of course, are important, but you also want AI to work for your salespeople and your HR people, they should probably have training that is customized to their role and the kinds of tools that might fit. And then you can also bring in the governance strategies that are really appropriate for sales and HR people too. So there's that. I mentioned experiential learning. When I'm talking about learning styles, I'm also talking about the ways in which people get excited to absorb information, Melissa. So for some people, that means literally shutting the door, having lunch at their desk, and
Mhm.
listening to a YouTube video. I've encountered this quite a bit. Some people really, really love to learn this way because it's private and they can really think because they're very cerebral or they have a
Mhm.
certain way of processing information that is unique to them. I've also had a lot of clients with employees that need to be involved. They need to get into breakout rooms and talk to lawyers as salespeople or talk to their IT people, because the synergy of sharing ideas and even beliefs about AI is really validating for them. So I think that really matters too. To keep it simple, because I could talk about this forever, continuous learning too. Look, AI is changing all the time. I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently that is a tech company owner, and a year ago, he said, I think AI is going to be used in every facet of my business within the next year. And I thought he was crazy. And it turns out that he wasn't wrong. You know, this guy is using AI everywhere to the tune of like, he's paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for artificial intelligence. And when you have people paying this kind of money, the companies that provide these technologies are growing and they're adapting and improving upon their AI systems, and they're always coming out with new models. I think in the last year, we've seen 3 or 4 different Chat GPT models come out. And with each one of those new releases, Melissa, there's an opportunity for that thing to get better. But if you don't know how to use it and understand why it's different, you're leaving your workforce behind. You have to help them understand how to use each model to its best possible capabilities. Otherwise, you are actually just throwing money away at the end of the day. So I'm going to keep it simple, sit with those 3, then I'll put the other 15 that I have on the back burner for another episode.
For the training
Yeah,
episode
absolutely.
we have.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I haven't seen an AI training platform out there yet. Just as a note, I've seen it training for products, how to use their product, but I haven't seen it for employee. And just to wrap up, I was writing down as we were talking, okay, risks and rewards in the workplace, and I would say, I'll start with the risks. So the risks, I would say, if it was a listener, what I would have heard was no AI policy. Okay, we banged that one a bit. No AI champion. Okay, who is or who are the group leading this thing? Because I think you need to think about that. People are going to bring it into the workplace, and who's leading your way. And the last thing you just mentioned, no training. And I would equate that to phishing emails. Like the number one reason people get hacked is phishing emails, and yet no one's training them on to look for the basic stuff. On the reward side, you hit it, Tommy, like productivity gains, right? Structuring unstructured data, automating manual tasks, right? I would say risk mitigation. Christina, you talked as a reward. You can avoid a lot of problems as an employer with doing some of the things we talked about. And lastly, I think the biggest bump of reward is like customer experience, which is going to lead to sales and all that stuff, which our audience wants. But I just want to say thanks again for walking this path with us today. I know we stopped a few different spots along the way, but I'm really enjoying the insight that you two give as a lawyer and as a practitioner. Tommy, I'll call you, and consultant guy, because I think you see it differently than we do.
Absolutely. And I'm excited about the next episode where we're really going to dive into the AI policy brief, right? I know we keep mentioning it, but let's really dive in and what does that look like and how does that get implemented? So
yeah, that's what I want to know is how do you two create an AI policy for a company? What is the kind of the discovery part, like the phases through? Because I think our audience will be really interested in learning about that.
Absolutely. If we haven't scared them enough now, they need it. Anyway, thanks again. I'm really looking forward to episode 3, and we'll see you next week.
Pumped. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.